we go. Okay, so thanks all for joining. Just as a quick introduction, as I just mentioned, we're going to be recording tonight. That just allows you to refer back to it. It also means you can share it with people who maybe have missed it and might be involved in running a screening. The sound quite low. Good that I spotted that. I can solve that. I can solve it on my end, I think, because it's probably my mic. Sound and video. Is that better? Yes, got lots of thumbs up. Good. So we're going to be recording this mainly for people who might want to share it, but also if you want to refer back to anything that's mentioned. And I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping just to begin, just to essentially make sure we don't get a little bit confused as we go along. The first thing to clarify is we are not the makers of the film. So 0 Hour are a separate organisation to the National Emergency Briefing. But what we have decided to do is realising just how important it is at the moment and as a film and how many people around the country want to run screenings. We wanted to come in and help that team as they're doing all of that wonderful recording to basically try and facilitate some of the questions, some things that might come up. So hopefully that clarifies what we can and can't answer. So things about the actual film itself or some very technical information about the film, we might not have the answers to, but general advice on things to consider around the screening, how you might want to connect to other people, how to promote it, how to engage your MP in it. That's hopefully what we're going to be covering. And if there is, we've got a big Q&A at the end. We're going to try and I'll probably present for about 20 minutes, which feels quite long, but that gives us a good 40 minutes just to have a conversation amongst each other. I'm pretty much running this solo, which means me monitoring the chat is going to be a bit of a difficult one, but you're more than happy to use it, more than welcome to use it. But for questions, I think we'll just do it by people raising their hand at the end as a way of not having to look back through the whole chat. So let me just start with the why, which for many of you, because you've joined this call, it's probably quite obvious, but it's important to cover these different varying reasons why people might want to host this film, which is now called the People's Emergency Briefing. And one of the main reasons is to try and prompt conversations in our communities about the multiple different impacts that happen as a consequence of the climate and nature crisis. Is trying to tell the story of this is actually something that impacts every aspect of our life, from our health to national security to farming and food. So this is how do we bring a big intersectional group of people together about what's at risk, but also the opportunity of MPs to take action and to deliver an alternative pathway. So there's a joint conversation there. But a big part will be about how people feel, what people's particular motivations are, and how do we connect to each other. Another part, which is a really important part to us at 0 Hour, is about engaging the MP. Is awareness. We've many of us in this call have been around this many times before, and been at many film screenings, and at been many things that we thought this will be the light bulb moment, and it sort of. And then that fizzles out and the moment goes. And this is really about utilizing this moment where people feel something about the information that's being presented as an opportunity to actually say, how do we come together and try and engage with our MP on the solutions that already exist, that they could support, and the importance of them saying what new actions they're going to be taking. Because I might even do this by, you can just use your human hand if you want, but as a sign of how many people in this room have been in a position where they write about a really urgent issue and they get told, here's all the things I've already done about it. How many people have had an email like that? Okay, that's the vast majority. And essentially, we're trying to use this as a mechanism to stress the importance of this new film, this new information, alongside the security briefing, as a way of saying, what new action are you taking in response to this information? Because saying, the legislation that we put in place in 2009 or the actions that we took in whatever year it might be, is the thing we're doing about this new information, is essentially the conversation we want with MPs. And I will stress one thing, which is a really key part of the way that we work, is that engagement is not a way to say, you're not doing enough, you're really terrible, why are you useless? It's really about giving them encouragement, about saying, we want that answer, but it's also, we are here to be supportive of it. Like, we'll all get behind you if you do this thing. So it's how do we build a rapport with that MP, whilst also pushing that severity of why a cookie cutter answer doesn't always fit the bill. This also stands for local in terms of councils. So we know that a lot of on the ground work is happening at all different local authority level. So you might feel my MP is never coming on that journey with us. He's they've dug their heels in. This is a really good way to think about how councillors might actually step into that space. And creating a network of supporters. So again, some of us are lucky to be in local groups. Some people join calls like this and they write emails and they feel, why is no one worried about that? Why aren't people worried about this? Why aren't people celebrating all these organizations and solutions? And we are here at 0 Hour to try and help that. Is how do we actually connect you to other networks and other groups that are already doing great stuff? So how do we connect you to local faith groups or Friends of the Earth groups? How do we bring those people together and have these essentially community meetings with MPs on the back of running these films? And getting press attention. This might sound sort of strange that you're already thinking about post film screening, but it's a really good thing to think about when you're planning for a film, is thinking your MP might not come. They might be in a constituency that's got council elections. They're going out door knocking. They might be in a country with a devolved election where they're out door knocking, or they might just be super busy and they don't happen to be here. That doesn't mean you can't engage the MP. The press is a really good way of ensuring there's a response. If an MP sees lots of local people at an event and lots of quotes from people saying why they as a constituent are worried about the impacts, you're much more likely to, when you ask for an MP meeting, to cut through the many different asks that they have. So these are some of the reasons why, but you're all here, so you probably know many of those reasons, but it's good just to go over again. So we're going to cover these at the very end. People often leave calls and they think, okay, you've given me lots of information, but I actually don't know what you're asking me to do. So I'm going to start with them and then I'll come back to them at the end. There's essentially three things that we have. There's many others, but we're going to keep it to three. The National Emergency Briefing Team, they are going to be mapping where all these screenings are. So if you're interested in hosting one, even if you haven't got a venue, even if you're at the very beginning of this journey, signing up to them helps them identify where's running screenings and what help you might need. They will be doing some of that direct one-to-one support. And when it comes to us, we're going to be calling, if you do want to be connected to other people where you live, we have a sign up. Now this sign up is done, WhatsApp means that you have to do a lot of it quite manually. So it sometimes might have a bit of a delay between you signing up and us putting you into a WhatsApp group. But we have hundreds of different constituency groups, and they are bringing together scientists, faith leaders, councillors, and constituents, all who are interested in running screenings and meeting their MP. And the final thing is a bit of a bonus, but it's just to remind people that we are aiming to be as responsive as we can at 0 Hour, and the campaign at 0hour.uk, that's our direct grassroots email address to me and Jamie, who many of you have met, and we are there to help with actually bespoke support. So you might be saying, this is all well and good, but my MP won't do this and this, or my MP never does X, Y, and Z, or they already back the bill and I don't know what the next, I don't know what what more they can do. And our email is a way of us giving much more bespoke asks that you might have for your MP. Yeah, I've just seen quickly in the chat. Yeah, not everyone has access to WhatsApp. Really good point. There's multiple ways that we can help with this. Number one is we can essentially by email basically say as information is confirmed. We also will be working with the NEB team who will be doing official announcements of essentially when and where things are happening. And if you want to connect outside of WhatsApp, we can see if there's a key contact that you can be in touch with, whether you do planning meetings in person. But it's a good point. And I'm going to lean a little bit into, things can sometimes feel pretty despairing, and I think it's understandable. It's Why Zero Hour, our most recent campaign. It's called Restoring Hope for Climate and Nature. And this is really big for us. It's this feeling of hope is not passive. It's an active choice. Hope is about the actual actions that people do. You don't just feel hope. You have to actually build it and believe in it. And that means having sort of concrete plans and concrete results from your MP or councillor can take work, but that's where hope stems from. It's not just about whether we feel hope. It's about building hope for the others in our communities. It's about solidarity. It's about feeling that you are not alone in your constituency. It's about having a voice, so making sure the community have a say of how do they feel and fear this, the inaction, and how do they really believe and feel excited about what's going forward. And I'm trying to sort of keep up with the chat too. Really good to mention MP Watch. We were just in a call with them, and they are really good on this direct. How do you build a relationship with the MP? So we'll definitely be working with them on some of these tools. It needs to be viable and realistic. So going in and saying, I've got a Reform MP, but they are going to come out and they are going to table the most radical environmental legislation the world's ever seen might not bring you hope. But saying maybe that Reform MP might actually bring up nature loss and a Prime Minister's question as a result of this report. It's meeting people where they are and making sure every MP is moving in a direction closer to action. So now we're going to sort of cover some of the, I'm going to skip some to some of the actual proactive things that we need to think about. So the film, many of you probably have seen this, but the film has now been announced. It's being released on the 7th. Now that doesn't mean you have to hold the screening itself on the 7th, but they are sort of aiming to try and make a bit of a moment on this. But this will have limitations with if you're doing it online or if you have a venue, availability of other people in your community. So don't feel like you're fixed to that day. That's just knowing you will have access to the film from that day. And the film is free. So the film is free for everyone to host, which is good for us because it means that it's trying to minimize the cost of actually community groups running this. But there will be costs associated, which we'll cover, if you are going to do it in person. And Zero Hour and the NEB team aren't directly funding venue hire just because of the scale. It's a bit of a champagne problem to have in the end because we have constituencies. There's hundreds. It's probably going to end up closer to over 1,000 people who are interested in running screenings. Where I live in the northeast of Scotland, we've already got 3 potential places where screenings are going to happen just in my constituency. So I think it will grow arms and legs, which is one of the reasons why venue hire is something we'll talk about. And I just spoke about this, so I'm repeating myself, but there is the option to run it online, and there might be some merits for running it online for some people, which we'll talk about. So now I'm going to try and go through these points. I realize there's quite a lot of information in here now, but I'll try my best to cover them all and give space for questions. So a big question to have is sort of who is going to be the audience. So inviting your MP I've talked about, and councillors, but also inform local media. Local media sometimes actually come down to screenings directly to get quotes from people as they watch it. And also the thing that's always difficult is getting outside of your traditional audience. So how do you speak to sports clubs or maybe faith groups, or you might be in a church group, or how do you invite friends or family that might not traditionally sort of be interested in this subject, wouldn't come to a Friends of the Earth meeting, wouldn't come to an XR meeting, wouldn't come to a 0 Hour meeting, but might come to a film screening where they can sort of see that information and not feel like they're bound to any particular action or outcome. And that's really good for us, because in a way it might actually trigger some of those connections. And I've got some anecdotes which I always just throw in here, and hopefully it's not hopefully it's useful. One of them is, I once had an MP. They never engaged with us on climate and nature, but they're a football referee, and someone who was much smarter than me just said, that's how we engage them. Don't meet them where they're at. Don't speak to them, I want to meet you about X, Y, and Z climate legislation. Meet with them and say, I want to speak to you about grassroots football. And when they met with them, they actually had all of this data on the amount of games that were cancelled as a result of flooding, the amount of games that were cancelled in winter because of frozen pitches. They spoke about the cost of that and how much that impacted young people. And then they made that connection back to saying, but actually these wetter winters are going to be much more common. And that MP knew where to meet you. They knew that you were talking, they knew where their information was at, where their particular interests were, and it built a rapport with them so that they could sort of understand that. I'm going to cover what 0 Hour specifically can offer. We're a really small team. A lot of people sometimes look at our website and think we're a really big team. We're a really small team. We're less than 10 people, but we do our very, very best to try and give bespoke advice wherever possible. So we have, when most people meet their MP, can provide asks that are based on the MP's particular portfolio, what their particular interests are, looking at their voting record, understanding what they will and won't do traditionally. We have local WhatsApps for organising, which I spoke to and we'll send around after this call, also with a link to how do you sign up to be connected. We also offer support with local press releases, so we sort of have some media contacts and we can help frame that as a story, because even local journalism, the holding a screening in itself isn't enough of a story. Normally you have to make it a hook to something. So a hook to a local event that's happened, a local climate or nature impact, or a recent government announcement. So we can help make sure that you get some traction with local media. And we've got a new, it's brand new actually, we've only put it on the website today, which is a more general briefing on for MPs. It's something you can have, print off at home, hand to an MP directly. That could be ahead of the meeting, it could be at the meeting itself, it could be afterwards, but connects the national security reports, which I don't know, again, I'm going to say you can use your human hand if you want. How many people have seen that, the National Intelligence Report? Okay, there's a few people, quite a few people. It's something that we'll also share around after this call. It's a really important document for multiple reasons. The most important part of it is the fact that it was done by the Joint Intelligence Committee. So this is MI5 and MI6 saying this is actually a really direct threat to multiple aspects of security. And these reports, security reports, are really big parts of how government work. So government it is something that has a lot of credibility that can go alongside this film, to say this film is actually saying many things that your own intelligence committee are warning about, and that is why we're looking for what actions your constituency MPs specifically going to take. Now, that can be a really big ask, and it can be a smaller one, but it's a big part of what we're trying to do. I'm sort of doing this on their behalf, so hopefully this all is correct. But I did speak to them, so I think it's okay. So a reminder, just because I see there's a question in the chat. we are not the makers of the film. We are just supporting people to try and connect around the film. So practical support, technical information on the actual film itself is going to be sitting with the National Emergency Briefing Team. There is a sign up. They have a new survey. The survey allows you to give all that information about where you're at and where you what access you have to certain bits of tech, or where you're thinking about holding it, to give you much more bespoke help. They will also be providing something that's called a facilitation pack, because one of the big parts of what they're trying to do is to not just have people watch the film and go, oh my God, this is dire, but actually to try and facilitate conversations about how do people work together, what solutions that they are actually supporting, how do they feel about the film, and how do they feel about their MP, and try and do that collaboration onwards. But we will be going on to some things about the practical thing about hosting it in person, which we'll cover. Oh yes, and we'll also share again after this call. We'll do it in an email. There is already a sort of supporter pack that has resources for social media, video clips, graphics, all of that type of stuff for starting to promote that you're going to be holding this screening once you decide if you're going to go ahead with that. I've covered this quite a lot, and I realize we're sort of running a little bit over time with my section, but we have this form. You can connect with other campaigners. When it comes to all of that direct, specific advice to where your local area is, what possible venues there are, whether you want to do it online, who you're going to invite, what dates you're going to have, that form will help dial into that. Because a call like this with almost 200 people, it's not the environment. A WhatsApp allows people to be only with their particular sort of area where they're going to host the screening and dial into some of those details. And as I said, there is ways to connect outside of WhatsApp, and we will make sure everyone who's signed up to 0 Hour are given access of all the different screenings that are taking place. Help with a poster, really good point. So this, I'll just go back a slide quickly. This supporter pack is a live document. So there's lots of things that have been requested by them, including a poster, potentially a trailer, that type of stuff. That's going to keep being updated, but if you sign up through them, they will be giving you those updates incrementally. So yeah, really good point. There will be, but there's already graphics in there that you can work from, but specifically the poster is going to be added coming up. Okay, so organizing a venue is a really big part. If you decide to do it in person, the things to consider, many of you will be thinking about these anyway, but think about venues where you are that are accessible. And I mean accessible in all the different ways. I mean accessible in terms of, actually, is it wheelchair friendly, that type of thing. Is it also accessible in terms of, does it have public transport access? Think of all of these types of things, but how are you going to maximize people attending when people's attention is being drawn to lots of different things. Because the NEB team aren't charging for the film, the only real costs that we imagine will come up would be the venue itself, and if you need to hire a projector or a screen. Now, what a lot of people are already doing is covering costs through donations at the door, and ask venues if they will let you pay on the day of the event. Because where I am, that's what they offered me directly, which meant I can take the donations, don't have to put any money up front. The public liability insurance is a good question. It depends where you are. So, for example, I'm hiring a community centre building, and it's covered by the venue themselves. So it is a good question to ask is about insurance. But a lot of venues will cover it for all the events that they happen to host, as long as someone's there to open the door and be at the building. Consider sort of community venues. These are places that often will actually directly work with you in terms of the flexibility that you might need for payment or the donation side of it. And one thing which has happened in my constituency, which is a really good result, is we went to our council and said, given you support all of these climate things and you're really keen on public engagement, can we use a public space? And they said, no venue hire. You can use the space for free because this is for the public consultation. So, practical considerations. So if you're doing it in a physical venue, ask if the venue has a screen themselves, a projector and a screen. So that's a key thing. There's another question I'm quickly just seeing. The film is going to be released on that date for everyone at the same time. So for us watching it ahead of time, you can watch it ahead of time unless you're holding it on the night of the 7th, but it'll be out on the 7th. So you'll have access to it before, for sure. And we actually, I don't know about the NEB team, I've not asked them about this, but at 0 Hour, personally, I would advise watching it before because it's good to know. Yeah, film format, we can ask the NEB team and find out. We aren't the people who made the film, so that type of information they will have. But yeah, the sort of technical information is all going to be part of that facilitation guide that the NEB team who are behind the film are doing it. Just to be super clear with that point, it's our role in this is trying to get that first conversation about practical questions coming up. There will definitely be questions that the NEB team will have to answer directly about the film. And this is why signing up through the NEB, they have a survey. So you sign up through the form, they'll then send you a survey. The survey lets you say, what information do you need? What help do you need? And they will be able to give a lot of that direct practical support. And our role, hopefully at 0 Hour, is to actually give some of that. How do you connect with other people? How do you connect to other organizations? How do you get press coverage? And how do you follow up MP meetings, hopefully? So a big thing that's come up for a lot of people have asked us this question in many different WhatsApp groups, so I thought I would answer it here, which is, what if my MP doesn't come? What if my MP is not interested in coming? What if he's busy doing council election stuff? What if the day of the film just doesn't happen to work out because it's not on a day that they're in the constituency? There is still a way that you can have using it as a follow-up conversation. So you can use a press release. You can use it as even just an email directly to the MP saying, 50, 100 people seen this screening. We would collectively like to meet you. And our team are here to support with the specific. How do you engage the MP? What if they're not responding? We've got lots of tips for that we probably don't have time to go into all of them, but I'm more than happy to speak to people if they're struggling to get engagement with their MP, how to help. And we can also help make sure that other people know in that constituency, so other organisations and individuals, so we can definitely help. And we can also provide bespoke briefings for the MP. So the timeline really, March is all about that first steps, thinking about when do you want to hold it, who you're going to invite, making sure that the MP knows, looking through that facilitation guide when the NEB team send it out, and thinking about all the things you need in place. And although we said April, May, there's some people holding screenings right the way through to June. So there's lots of things going forward from that. And I'm trying just to whistle through these last things. These, again, are the links that we'll send around. So the key thing to just really make sure I hit home before we go to the Q&A is make sure that if you're thinking about hosting a screening, make sure that you sign up through the NEB team, because the NEB team will have all that very specific practical and technical help around the sort of practical things that we need to cover. Our job will be how do we connect you to other people, and helping you give that bespoke advice. And we are here to sort of help with that. I do recognise, just seeing comments in the chat, there is quite understandably an urgency to get information around what projectors you might need, what dimensions the film might be in, and that technical information. We can go directly. I'm very close to the NEB team, so I can tomorrow give them a call and just see if I can give as much of that as possible in a follow-up email. But this is where things are, obviously, when things are moving quite fast, in terms of all these organizations trying to mobilize. We just wanted to start this conversation to get people thinking about some of these questions, maybe not being able to answer them all, but we'll try and give as much links and information as possible. Some of you probably know, but some might not know. But the film is actually being filmed right now, which means there is some information about the film that they might not even know themselves. But what's really good to sort of get, and actually it's a direct, it's good to sort of cover it because it's in the chat, is the film is different to just the briefings. So the reason there is a delay between when the briefing happened and when the film happened is the film is actually going to have extra people in civil society speaking about impacts, and it's fronted by Chris Packham, someone's already covered. So it is presented in a different way, quite intentionally, because the idea is that the briefing was designed for MPs, business, policymakers. It was meant to be the answers they definitely need. The thing that the film is trying to do is to do mass audience. How does people actually have conversations about what this feels like in communities to everyday people, as a way of trying to prompt these conversations, because not everyone is mobilized by charts and tables and stats. Quite a lot of people are motivated by personal stories of what this impact feels and looks like, which is a big part of what will happen next, and how do we get that through to MPs. But I'm going to stop sharing. I realize I've spoke for a lot and giving you a lot of information, hopefully. I'm more than happy to take questions. I'll answer as many as I can. You can either use the digital hand. There should be a button that says raise hand, or you can use your physical hand and hopefully I'll notice you. But ideally the raising hand button, and I'll try and go through questions from there. And I'll very quickly say before I jump into questions is, if I don't get to your question, although I can't read the chat when I'm answering them, if towards the end I haven't answered it, I'll just stay on and you can leave it in the chat. I'll have all your emails and I'll try and capture as many of them to make sure the follow-up has as many answers to them as possible. We're basically creating a frequently asked questions section, which will hopefully be a one-stop shop for all of these things. But yes, we've already got some hands, which is great. So Carol, do you wanna start? I've got to just change something, just quickly. And you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, hi. Yeah, I think somebody's mentioned it in the chat, but it's suggested or encouraged that after the film, there's an opportunity for discussion or questions or something.
Yep.
And that's a bit that's a bit scary for me, and screening something. What is there going to be advice about suggestions for that format?
Yeah.
Where you get experts or people that can hold that kind of space well. To facilitate that kind of discussion. That's the bit that I think I'd need more help with.
Yeah, no, totally understandable. And yes is the answer. They've got a facilitation guide which is coming, which is directly support on how do you be the least front-facing as possible. The idea is to make advice on how do you run a sort of a session that needs minimal sort of presentation, relatively simple, but that's why 0 Hour we're trying to connect groups, and we're also encouraging people to go to the NEB sign up. The reason they both play a role in this is, for us, we can connect people if there's people already supporting scientists or experience of facilitation who want to take that part on. It's great to actually try and have a group of people who are organizing it, because one person can say, I'm setting up the film, I'm making sure it's advertised. Someone else is saying, I can do facilitation and follow-up. So that's definitely a big thing. The reason why the NEB sign-up is so key to that is that the NEB team actually are trying to essentially be like, if people feel like they need extra support, extra training, their survey directly, you can say that. You can say, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm worried about this aspect. I don't know who's going to do that. Or I do have someone who could maybe help in a next constituency, because for me, it doesn't really work. It's very far to my next constituency. But some people are in an area that they will be able to be like, well, I could travel for the night. I could go in 15 minutes, an hour, or whatever, to the next constituency to also help because they'll do multiple and they can become that person. But yeah, through 0 hours sort of WhatsApp groups and that NEB sign up, we should be able to address it. And the facilitation guide's directly addressing what you're talking about. It's coming in March, and it was my question to them. My first question was, lots of people will have never had any engagement beyond, how do you hold that? How do you make sure it doesn't sort of have, what happens if there's people in your group that are rejecting the information, all of that stuff. And they said they're on that, and they've got lots of support they can help. I hope this is all still in order. It's come up in an order in my screen, so let's give this a try. Yes, Julie, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, thank you. I'm keen to link up with people in Bristol, but I'm not on WhatsApp. I don't have a smartphone. I'm just wondering when people in my situation would expect to get an email. I'm not quite sure if I've ticked the right box or signed up to the right thing.
So you've signed up to join on WhatsApp or not? You're saying you're not doing WhatsApp?
Yeah, not doing WhatsApp. I have
Okay.
signed up to something on your website, but maybe I didn't sign up to the right thing because I haven't had an email about, non-WhatsApp contact.
Okay, well, so I'll have your email from your sign up. I'll make sure you're definitely on the other comms because we need to make sure you're on a newsletter in general. Most places, because we only just find out the film's coming out on the 7th, we haven't got screening, so we haven't emailed anyone about here's the details and here's the people organizing because we're at an early stage of that. But I will make sure that your email is on our general newsletter list because we have a weekly newsletter that should give other bits of information about what's happening. But the local stuff is coming because we're just at this early stage of getting screenings organized. Yeah.
Thank you.
Dave, do you want to go next?
Yeah. So we know that general release is on the 7th of April. My local council-owned cinema program manager is saying, you need to show me the film before I can make a decision. How soon ahead of the 7th will we have the film and be able to take it to someone like that manager for a private viewing for a decision?
Yeah, really good question. I think it's one for me to directly ask the NEB team tomorrow. What they've told us so far is the film is coming out for everyone at the same time. In my sense is they will have access, but no other partner organization will. But if we specifically go back to them and say, this isn't for public viewing, this is for cinemas, they probably have a policy around it ongoing anyway, because they're already working with specific organizations and venues for screening it. So yeah, it's definitely something that I'll follow up to check if there is any potential to give advance notice of sharing that film ahead of time, or whether the 7th is quite a hard deadline for them in terms of release. But
Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
definitely something for me to follow up. Yeah. Kevin, do you want to go next?
Sorry, needed to unmute. Thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, thanks, Alan, for an extremely comprehensive briefing. My question is about PERDA, which is the period, obviously, before the local elections, and there's some discussion, and I'm not sure we've got a decision around what we can and can't do. And the reason I ask is because where I am, I have already got my local MP to facilitate a Q&A after the film, subject to date, but I'm now a little bit worried about that's going to be in the run-up to the council elections.
Yeah, no, this is a question that we've also had, which we've got various different answers back. We once had an answer that because they are still the MP during that time and they haven't sort of broken up their role in an election period, that it's fine. And then other people have told us that given that they would still be a platform for them to endorse their particular positions and party positions, it's a bit more murky. This is something that, again, I'm going to sound a bit like a broken record, but it is a really good question for me to have with the NEB team, because they probably can get official advice by being the actual organisers of the film to say, as an official position, that they can get a standard response from whoever it might be, electoral commission potentially. But our understanding. Oh, I've got a waving hand, which makes me feel like David from MP Watch knows the answer. Is that correct?
I don't exactly know the answer, but I have been in direct correspondence with Nick Aldridge on this in the last couple of days. Technically, because it's apolitical, in theory, there isn't an issue. We're not campaigning for a particular party. The reality is that some councils, some councillors, and some council officials will be hypersensitive because they perceive a criticism of certain parties by our very actions. And therefore, you may find that they either decide not to come, not to attend. You may have difficulty booking a council venue for it, and you may have difficulty publicising the event through council leads. But in theory, it's absolutely fine. In reality, I don't think it is. And it's possible that councillors can attend in their own right and not as in their personal capacity, but it's quite challenging for them to actually do that and then be held to account. And of course, the discussion after the filming is to an extent uncontrolled, and therefore it could get out of hand in that political environment. And then you get the press reporting on actually a debate about whether it's affected the election or not. So personally, if you've got elections in your local area and there's an election map that covers that, it's basic in simple terms. Big areas of the country have no elections whatsoever. So have a look at that election map if you look up for it. If they're not happening in your area, then you're absolutely fine to go ahead. But if there are elections in your area, personally, I would just move to the other side of May the 7th, and preferably, if there's a risk that your council might become a hung council and they haven't sorted out who's going to lead it after May the 7th, until after the first planned council meeting after May the 7th.
Thank you. Very helpful. Yeah, very helpful.
In the chat. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Helpful but unhelpful.
No, it's helpful because it steers me beyond the May the 7th, I think.
Okay.
Oh, I'm on mute. I'm on mute, so that was silly. David, do you have a question of your own? You had your hand up before answering that one, just to make sure you don't get lost in the queue.
It's fine because I seen my question was related to that.
Okay, great.
But actually, I'll throw one in. Having thought about it, if anyone has particular skills or links that with a significant network that they want to offer, then we're trying to pick up those people who can then link into those networks. So we're doing a sort of two-tier thing. 0 Hour have been really helpful in helping us on developing the constituency network and the sort of regional network. We're trying to link across that with a load of sectors. And if you've got links in different sectors that may be sort of broader than your local constituency, then let us know about it. Or if you've got particular skills and you have got time to offer some help to the team, then we need some help there. So send us a message, put something in the chat, and I'll catch up with you.
Great, thanks for that. Phil, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you. It's just a fairly simple question, is how do we attract people to attend? So I can give an example. Last year at our we had a festival week in our village, and I'm part of a local environmental group, and we had a talk for one evening, which was all about climate change, and I think it was reasonably well advertised, but we had 10 people turn up. So, we can go ahead and, like, for example, in my case, book the village hall, which has a capacity of 100, but how can we be sure that we're going to get a reasonable number of people turning up? And also, following on from that, obviously there's quite a long list of potential venues that we could book, and different size of capacity. So, how many do we book? Sort of what to cover a geographic area? How many, say, per square mile or whatever? Is there any steer on that as well?
Yeah, so in terms of a specific steer on venue size, it's probably quite difficult for us to give an exact. But in promotion, the good thing is there's lots of networked organizations who are helping with this. So a good example is Zero Hour has, on average, has over 100, closer to 150 in each constituency, people who signed up to the bill. And we know that there's someone who's interested. And the idea is that we're wanting them to go to their own network. So it's not just we go to those 100 people. The idea is when we know screenings, there will be, for everywhere where we know there's a screening, we're going to be advertising the screening, but also saying to people, okay, now go out to audiences about the themes that were in those individual briefings. So think about going to a health body or people who work in the health profession, or going to a faith group, or going to a sports club, and seeing if you can get them to go on those themes alone. Because what's really difficult is when you say, we're running this climate film, because you'll get people who are either interested or not. But if you say, we've got this film about how nature loss is impacting health, and we think you as this health charity could be interested, or this is how it's affecting the economy, so we think you'd be interested, or it's how it's affecting defence. And so it's how do we get our network as well as all these sort of other people, so MP Watch and Climate Emergency Centres and these different organisations all working. And the reason why we, as much as we love the fact that people are signed up through Zero Hour, the reason why we keep saying the importance of signing up through the National Emergency Briefing team is that they will be making a map, and the map will actually be an additional resource to actually advertise it, which means it's not all on word of mouth or putting posters up. Actually, everyone that signed up through that NEB network will also be able to have this map. They can say, look at all these screenings that are nearby. Which is one factor. So this sort of trying to think outside our traditional audience is definitely one. How organizations like ours really lean into it. Because if you do get to the point where you say, I'm really worried about attendance, it will take us 3 minutes, 2 minutes for us to say, we'll send a newsletter to 150 people in that constituency, and we can give them a reminder. And I'm sure the NEB team will be doing a very similar thing. So lean into those networks is one bit of advice. The other bit of advice is that the supporter pack, which I said is this live document, it will already has these resources around whether it's social media, or it will have posters and things that will help get the word out there. And something which I really don't know, this might be terrible advice because I have no idea if other people this works in other people's constituencies, but where I live, there's lots of sort of free, sort of what's on type websites, little magazines and stuff. And doing them can take a little bit of time, but can reach people who would otherwise, they might not be on social media, but they would pick up this thing that says what's on the community and it's advertised. My local newspaper, for example, has one that's free. You just write in and say, we've got a film screening, it's on that day. We've got a public meeting, it's on that day. And they just put it in a what's on, which is in the newspaper. We can definitely help with much more bespoke things, which I could go into loads of detail about advertising. It's sort of a thing I end up having to do a lot because I live in a rural area. But another thing is how do you get a press release ahead of the film? So actually trying to link it to a local story and saying, this thing happened locally or this government policy is happening, and people are coming to watch this film with experts to discuss what they're going to do in response. That becomes a community story rather than just an advertisement. And then sometimes local press will use it in that way, where they'll link it to a story. So they'll do a whole bit on that impact or that story, and then they will put in the end saying local people are meeting at the screening, particularly if you're doing it by donation at entry, because you're not saying I'm making money from it, I'm just covering costs. So, but yeah, more than happy to chat more about details on that, because it's something that I know can be tricky. Yes, Dan, do you want to go next? I realize that we probably are going to run over time, so if people need to leave, it will be recorded. I just realize, but I'm keen just to get the people who've got their hands up to answer your questions if I can.
Yeah, is that okay? Yeah.
Yep.
This is really inspiring, and I can actually see that, along with the movement that's been happening for a while, it's going to happen, and gradually the whole nation will have all this information. And I'm wondering whether maybe towards the end of the year, will you have something that kind of amalgamates everybody and puts it well, what I've written down, actually, have you got a skeleton plan for what to do once we all know about it? Because while you've been talking, I've actually done a WhatsApp message out, got a group to respond and say, oh, this is really good because my MP doesn't do anything. They're all spineless. Our councillors are like that in the area where I live. My MP is actually a goodie, so that's okay. But who's going to be the people who do something about it? Where's the solution?
Yeah, really, really, really good question. It's almost like I planted you in this call, but I didn't, I promise. So the idea is that all of us are going to be offering different things that resonate with people from the film. And what I mean by that is the National Emergency Briefing, their plan following this will be about how do we keep this conversation going and how do we get this televised debate that's on their website? How do we make this conversation go all the way from a village hall right the way to national broadcasting and keep that conversation going? Now, 0 hour.
Once we know that, once we've done that, what do we do next?
Yeah, but that's what I'm getting onto. 0 hour are very specific on the fact that we want these groups to actively be calling for new legislation, and that might be the climate nature bill in its current form, and it might be amendments to other bits of legislation. But our reason, and it's a little bit of letting the cat out of the bag here, but the reason why we put so much resource into these screenings not only is that we think it's important, but we know that when people watch screenings like this, they then say, I now know the problem. Is there a solution? What am I going to do next? And the thing that we want to do is say that network of people, relationship with councillors, with MPs, to move them along on a journey towards changes in legislation to meet those individual challenges is the only way that this becomes effective. Because I will repeat this till the cows come home. It's like I'm not that old, but my whole life I have seen films and information on the scale of the crisis, and that's been shared with lots of MPs. And the thing that is always missing is actually, right, you agree with us and you know it's a problem, there's a gap in the legislation, here's the specific thing. So we have the Climate Nature Bill as a ready-to-go legislation that already exists, that has, I'm going to now do a full advertising spiel, but 192 MPs, 1,200 scientists, I can't even remember how many trade unions, how many faith leaders, 375 councils are all backing it. So there is solutions that exist, and we have a relationship. Again, I don't want to oversell it, but we also have relationships directly in Parliament. We are the secretariat of a thing called the Climate and Nature Crisis Caucus. It has people of all political parties other than Reform who participate in actually pushing questions into Parliament, into committees, saying, given this security report, given this announcement at COP, will the government commit to changing this in the legislation? So not will they give a statement, not what is their policy, but actually saying, we know what the gap is, what's the timeline on fixing that? And this can take lots of forms. This could be the draft, the carbon budget delivery and growth plan that the government have revealed in Scotland. That's the draft climate change plan. This could be amendments to things like last year with the planning and infrastructure bill. There's loads of particular things in Parliament that MPs can be doing. And not every MP is going to jump straight to the biggest piece of legislation, but every single MP can do something. Now, that might be, I'm bringing up a question, I'm joining a committee, I'm joining the caucus, I'm tabling an amendment, I'm putting up an early day motion. They've all got something they can do. And our bespoke help that I spoke about is working out what's the specific of where you live. So we hope we get groups together through the film and we give the bespoke advice from there.
So that's wonderful, and I'm sorry to keep going on about it, but that's from the big level. Fantastic. Yeah. You've got an answer, you've got a solution. Thank you for that. And what about individual people? Because I am very old, and I know that behaviour change for the individual people. They need to change their behaviour. We all need to change our behaviour. And in one sentence, use less. How do we convince people use less?
So this is a really good point because of what I'm about to say, which is going to sound a little bit complicated, but hopefully it'll make sense. Which is, we know that people are stretched between loads of different campaigns, all asking you to do lots of different things. We recognise that probably won't change, but what we can do is start to use this as a moment to funnel people towards where they are most connected to. So some people are like, I want this legislation to pass, or my main thing is this problem with retrofitting housing, or my main thing is about plant-based diets or whatever. And our thing is going to be, how do we signal them towards those? So it's not, what I'm saying is our WhatsApp are not, they don't belong to us. We facilitate and manage them, but we have a network of organizations who support the work we do. And we are heavily encouraging them to be involved in those groups so that when someone says, I'm not particularly mobilized by writing to my MP, but I am interested in this council thing, we can say, you need to speak to this person at Climate Emergency UK, or you need to meet with this. And someone local might even not be in our network, be in the WhatsApp group and say, hey, I run this organization, you should come down and help. So everyone will have a role. That's the idea. But we as Zero Hour are a little bit biased because we are like sort of sole focused on Westminster legislation, but we can connect people for sure.
Thank you.
Yes, I can see Claire is putting her hand up. Do you want to come in? And then we've got quite a few other people that'll try and get through.
Sorry, I couldn't find my cursor. I'm interested to know if you're making contacts with any groups and organisations at national level. And I'm thinking of organisations like the WI, Rotary, Lions, U3A, so that whether they then will be passing the message and the impetus for action down the lines, or whether we should be making that contact with them at local level.
Really good point. The idea that the question would probably be both. What I mean by that is, so we definitely have contact is a good point to say. So we, at the national level, we have this part of our work, allies and partnerships. So we work with all different people. And people at WI will definitely be speaking about how do they connect to these WhatsApp groups, how do they connect to screenings. Same with Friends of the Earth. Again, I'll do it as a follow-up in the email. I'll have to remember all these links I need to put in. But on our website, Zero Hour, we have all the people who've come on board and supporting what we do, over almost 1,000 organizations. So I think that's a key thing to think about. But the reason I say both is we're not precious about it. So if you feel like I just want to get things moving and we've not heard from them, you reaching out only sort of prompts it, because we are sort of going to essentially like staff teams that might not be in your area, but there's no harm in doing both. But if you feel like you haven't got the capacity to do both, we absolutely can.
So will you be able to let us know what you achieve with those groups so that we can sort of reinforce it at local level?
Yes, yeah, we can do that. Not a problem. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Marianne, do you want to come in?
Yes, very practical one. Have you got any idea how long this film is going to be? I'm thinking one needs to know how long we need to find a venue for and that sort of thing in time.
Sorry, can you just repeat that question? I couldn't hear.
All right. Do you yet know how long the film itself will last?
David's waving his hand, but I think it's 50 minutes.
Yeah.
I think it's 50 minutes. Is that right, David?
Yeah, I've heard 45.
Yes. Yeah.
And 45 for the discussion afterwards.
Exactly.
And skeleton plan.
And that is intentional, as David's just talked about. It was intentionally there by recognizing that it's the film and the discussion after that make the impact, because showing a film about the scale of a problem people can feel quite despairing about how much has to be done. So connecting with others in conversations will be a really key part of this, which is why that facilitation guide that's coming is key. But hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, that's a real help. Thanks very much.
Yeah. And is it Michael? Is that how you pronounce it? Do you want to come in? No. I'll click a button. It should come up on your screen in case you are there. There we go.
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah. I think there's a big difference between MPs and councillors in deeds and words. MPs and councillors can agree with you one day, but in the deeds they do, it's seldom that they're going to move away from the party position. And I think it's great what we're doing, but I see NEB as more than just relying on MPs.
Yeah.
In general, MPs do follow the party line.
Yeah.
And that's something we have to get out of. I've had that discussion with my MP, many times about the seriousness of the situation. And the bottom line is, it might be very uncomfortable for us, but we are in a life-threatening situation right now, not just our future generations, but us personally.
Yeah.
So, I think we have to look at the gravity of the situation. But I take your point that any kind of showing that there has to be in the discussion how can I put it, a facilitator even.
Yeah.
And that's really important as someone who also, if possible, who could deal with emotional impact. But for me, it's a NEB is so. I was at the meeting in London on day, and it was very powerful. But I see NEB as more than just being, a part of 0 Hour. I think it's fantastic what you're doing, but I see it as NEB as being a part of a wider movement, national wider movement, and that's what we need. We need all the movements coming together. It's the only way to get out of this.
I couldn't agree more. And it's why this moment and what NEB's done is so important, because what I responded to Diane sort of comes into this, where it's like there will be a role for it's that saying, it's like everything all together all at once. That's the sentiment. It's this feeling of like we don't have to do it all, but we will have to be looking at this from all angles. So an individual, what's your community doing? What's a council doing? What's a parish council doing? What's an MP doing? And how do we move them along? And we'll all have energy in a different place. And the good thing is there's such a wide network of organizations that are offering such an amazing amount of work. And essentially, as long as we're moving towards the same direction, finding out where you're best resourced to actually help is absolutely right. And that might not be based on your own skills. It might actually be based on where your MP is at. So I used to have an MP and he was never going to move closer to what we were doing. So we just said, we're going to focus on the council. And that delivered lots of results. Now, other people have the total opposite effect. The council aren't moving any closer, but the MP does. Now, don't live in a silo. And it might take longer to do this, but the reason why 0 Hour, when we were promoting the Climate and Nature Bill, the reason why we have council motions was not because we thought, well, it's a nice story, 375 councils back the bill. It was because those connections are trust networks that we don't currently have. So they don't know who 0 Hour are. We don't know them personally, but that councillor does. That MP used to be the councillor. He was on the council with that person, and they've just passed a motion. So him messaging him, calling him, having a meeting, and saying, the council used to be part of it, just passed the thing. What do you think about it? It starts something that's moving them closer to it, and quite a lot of them have led to us as 0 Hour getting an introduction to that MP, saying they want to hear more about what's going on. So trust networks are massive, and that network of networks is massive, and also that role of councils and local groups is huge. So yeah.
Can I just come back very quickly to that?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Well, we had a people's assembly with councillors.
Great.
3 days ago. We had it in County Hall in Cornwall. And unfortunately, most councillors didn't come to it, but some councillors did. And what we're finding is that all county council policy is based upon net zero by 2050, keeping below 1.5 by 2050. Well, at the briefing, Professor Tim Lenton said, we're actually at 1.4 now. So basically, all the data the council are using is way out of date. And that's something which really needs to be exposed. And when I mentioned this to one of the councillors, and I said, look, you're using the wrong data, she got very emotionally upset because she understood it.
Yeah, totally.
And every council was following that 2050 reached below 1.5 degrees. We're there now.
It's a really, really vital point, because it's been used by MPs for too long by being like, we've got a net zero 2050 strategy, and you're right, it's inadequate. It will blow carbon budgets out of the water. We're, as you said, we're already at this threshold. So yeah, how we can push things in legislation, and also that information back to council levels does come to what you talked about. This needs to be seen as a collective movement, and that collective movement is so we're trying to do this. As I said, we're only 10 people at 0 Hour, but we have loads of campaigners, and what we're trying to do is make that connection between the scientists and expertise and elected people much closer. So how do we actually have, for example, a follow-up MP meeting, or it might be a meeting with councillors? How do we look at our supporting scientist network and say, we can get you in touch with this person? So you go to that meeting with someone who says, I am this scientist, and I want to say why this thing doesn't work, where the gaps are, and what you can do about it. Now that councillor might have the power to do it all himself, but he might be able to say, I'll put you in touch with the climate change officer, the sort of civil servant in the council, to speak about their strategy. So absolutely, these networks are critical, and it's the 2050 point's massive. It was part of the reason why the Climate and Nature Bill sort of came to being, was the sense of we recognised that things like consumption emissions, aviation emissions, all of these things, there's a massive gap. So yeah, really good point. I'm keen to try and move questions forward, so I'll try and get through as many as I can. Phil, do you want to come in?
Sure, thanks, Alan. When we organise events like the showing of this film, we tend to find we get the same people turning up every time.
Yeah.
Like having a party, inviting all your friends.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on how we can best attract the silent majority, the
Yes.
86% of whatever who understands an emergency don't know what to do.
Yes. Yeah, so there's 2 points. I'm going to start by being, this is maybe going to sound a bit of a cheat answer. There's one, the beginning point is having lots of people who are the converted isn't necessarily the end of the world, because those people are much more likely to do these follow-up actions and be on board with meeting the MP, and coming together is a really big part of this, even if they are converted. But to answer the question more thoroughly, the how you convince people is mainly about how do you actually meet them where they're at. So think about things like the cost of living, think about air pollution where you live, think about these everyday issues rather than saying we're going to do this film. So the reason why that's interesting is because you know that it will be accurate. So you know when they are speaking in the film about health, you know that's going to relate to them thinking about air quality. Or if they're speaking about food security or the cost of food in their supermarket, what Paul Behrens did in that briefing, that conversation about food security will be a big part of that. So meeting them where they're at and thinking about networks that have a specific interest in health and food, and not going to them saying, we've got a climate film we want to show you, saying, we've got a film about essentially how there's impacts on health and how we're going to deal with it, and it will cover all these other subjects. So that's one part. The other thing is to think about your own trust network. So thinking about people that you wouldn't invite to an XR meeting or a 0 hour meeting or whatever, but you might invite them to something that is much more general. So I'm thinking about the screening, like inviting my brother. My brother is someone who sees things like flooding happening quite regularly and is like, what are people doing about this? And why is this happening? Why is this happening to us so much? And actually saying, oh, you don't have to explain the rest of it. All you have to do is say there's a film about, about the flooding and what's driving this. It's on in this day. But the thing that I do say that's key is that idea of the converted can be an ally for a wider thing in terms of because this very much isn't seen as the end of the road in terms of if you get, it depends how much that converted audience is, I guess, but meeting them where they're at is a really big thing. And hopefully it'll be quite inspiring when we share this email tomorrow about the supporters, for example, of 0 Hour. And I know there's other organizations, people from organizations in this call that also have these wide networks of trade unions, of sports organizations, people that you wouldn't think of as the regular climate organizations who've come on board. And the reason they've come on board is because we met them with where they're at. So a good example, we were really lucky and fortunate to have huge organizations like the National Trust come on board and support what Climate and Nature Bill is doing. And we did that by speaking about National Trust sites. We spoke about actual direct impacts to them. And the same goes for sports clubs. It's meeting people where they're at is the biggest way of doing it. And the way that you put things like posters and flyers, people see them a million times. A lot of it comes from if you have that connection, or sometimes sending an email with how they're connected to it. And that isn't a way of sort of saying everyone's selfish, but it's a way of saying, how do you make them feel heard by saying, why does it benefit them rather than benefit you? It's not like I want people at my screening. It's like, I want to work with you on something that you really care about.
Okay.
Hopefully that helps.
So can I ask a very quick subsidiary question related to an earlier question? It's probably one for the NEB, but do you happen to know if they're going to make the film available in a way we can actually share it with people, like someone who might want to show the film?
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what the full detail of what the timeline of this is, but there is a plan for longer term for how do people not just. So it starts with a big public screening, but the idea of it actually becoming, how do you start to do that with trusted people? So how do you show it in your living room and invite people around? Or how do you start, you might have a church group or a book club or something that meets regularly. How do you actually do it in private environments where you're like, well, we meet anyway, we can just show it in where we're at as a smaller scale thing. So the idea is that the film doesn't have like we show the film once and it's done. The idea is that you can think about future opportunities of who didn't come, but maybe why didn't they come. So yeah, definitely, it's something that I don't know exactly when that happens, but that is something that's on their radar about how do you go beyond this one moment to sort of keep drip feeding into people's lives.
Thank you.
Jean, do you want to go next? Oh, you're on mute, I think. Let me just click the button. Can you unmute now? I'll give you a second. Hopefully you'll be able to.
There we go. Yes.
There we go.
When I'm speaking to people about this and trying to recruit people or trying to find a venue, I find it really, really useful to have a good flyer or a good something to hand people.
Yes.
And particularly when we've got climate events coming up here in Colchester, just to be able to stand there and give people leaflets. Yep. I know it sounds silly, but it gives you confidence and something to build on as well. You could then personalize it because you were saying, it has to be aimed at particular groups. But to go from scratch, I'm just wondering if you're thinking of doing that with a designer to make a really nice,
so the team
attractive.
The team at the National Emergency Briefing are currently designing sort of flyers and posters. I'll push them to find out when it's going to come out, but we can definitely share with everyone when we get access to them. Now, they will have ones that are generally designed, that are ready to go, but they'll also give people access to the files of them, so you can type in, the specific details of your location. So, yeah, we'll pass this on as soon as we have it, but we know they're on it. But that's the great thing about people who've signed up to this is we now can just, when we get these things, can send you an email saying, we've just been given the poster, we've been given a trailer, here it is.
Thank you. That's great. That would be the beginning of things for me.
Great. Yeah, good. And also just a secondary thing is this isn't about promoting the film, but if you want to also create a network beyond the film, Zero Hour also has sort of flyer packs that one side is about Zero Hour and the other side's about the briefing, and it has a link to joining local groups. Look at that, Lucy's got one. That's great. Perfect timing.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, let's try and get through these final questions.
That's lovely. Yes.
Gay, do you want to go next? Do you want to, Guy, if you want to, can you unmute?
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi.
Hello. I wrote my question over on the chat. Are we allowed to invite under 18-year-olds to our screening, please? And somebody, David Leverton, has said that others have said it's not suitable for under 16s. Is this audible to you?
Yeah, no, I can hear you. Yeah, no, I think that's my understanding too, is that it's probably going to be advised for 16 and over. I think part of it is because it's also likely to bring up quite a lot of emotion in people, particularly people who are not really in this subject, who are not reading articles about it all the time. When people say, if you've been hearing we're a climate leader, all of these things, I think there's definitely something in that, and there's something also in how do we facilitate young people into those groups. But this is something I've spoke to them about if there is opportunities to try and do both, because it is something that people might want to engage their own kids with, but that might be a separate thing to an actual screening. We don't know. So yeah, I'm sort of been speaking to them about how do we think about that. But I think I've heard the same thing as David, which is they sort of were saying 16 and over was the sort of advice that we were given.
Okay. Just while you're on, I've got a supplementary question.
Sure.
I'll just be as quick as I can. And it's the WhatsApp group.
Yep.
I'm on the WhatsApp group for my local constituency. Now, how do we coalesce under one, organizing for one place to screen? If several people, if more than one person says they want to host a screening, and I'm part of a small group that has plans to hold one. But then say there's somebody else down the road that we happen to not know about. That is that? Do you put them in touch with each other or what?
So at the moment, it's we're trying to work it out as we go along. Essentially, if people are in that same WhatsApp group, then obviously that makes it much easier where they can actually work together. But if they're not in that WhatsApp group and we find out a screening's happening, we're going to work with the NEB team, as the same with the climate emergency centres that have a really great WhatsApp community, to make sure that essentially all that information shared, so people know how can we funnel people to the specific constituency. So there's a group, or if you're doing it across a region where you're thinking, well, you might hold them and want to coordinate across multiple constituencies that are near each other, how do we point people towards the right group? So as people fill in the NEB form and we start to map out where the screenings are happening, the idea is that they know that we've got constituency ones. They also know that climate emergency centres have regional ones, and that will help us funnel people to the right place. The idea is that it won't only be WhatsApp. People will also, everyone that signed up, be emailed when they're told there is a confirmed screening, and potentially having a contact information for that person. So there will be WhatsApp and non-WhatsApp ways. One of them involves a thing I'm sure I am allowed to talk about. They are sort of designing a map that will be an interactive map to actually look around the country and look at specifically where you are, to look for other screenings. So there'll be lots of ways, both in WhatsApp and without. I can only obviously speak for what 0 Hour are doing, but there's lots of organisations that will be, I'm sure, notifying people in different ways. But for 0 Hour, we have a plan for everywhere there's a screening that signed up to our 0 Hour's newsletter will get a newsletter that says, confirmed there's a NEB screening in your constituency or multiple. These are the dates. Here is how you can find out more. So, hopefully WhatsApp will eventually become that place, but it's because it's at early stages.
Because we don't want to go too far down the road of preparing if somebody else is already.
Yes. Well, we're speaking. The good thing is, so Simon from the NEB team, he's done lots of work with us at 0 Hour, so we know him really well. So we quite regularly speak to him, and one of the things we said is, like, once you start getting confirmations, we don't need to know everything. All we need to know is there one and who's a contact person, so that we can be in touch with them and say, by the way, there's a WhatsApp group. So yeah.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
Great. Okay, we've got 2 more questions. Thanks for everyone for staying on. This is great. Cara, do you want to go next?
Thank you. I'm going to ask Robin Parker's question because I thought it was a very good question. In part because I'm part of XR engineers and engineering groups. How do we have any hint yet of how solution focused this will be? Because I think local solutions will be the way in to a lot of people's enthusiasm and engagement.
Yeah, I don't know if someone like David is closer to the film content, but Simon's been very tight-lipped with me. I think he doesn't want to, because there's going to be an edit basically. So
teasing.
So because there's an edit, I think he doesn't want to say this will be in it in case it doesn't make a final edit. So he's been very tight-lipped about what's in it. But the good thing is I have very strongly encouraged the NEB team. I think they've took it on board. The feeling of the facilitation part should have an aspect of essentially solutions led. So I'm really encouraging them to, in the solutions part, in the facilitation part, the talking part afterwards, part of that facilitation to be what's the solutions you think could address some of these problems, and what do you think local people can do to help them? And this again goes back to a little bit of bias, but it's why where 0 Hour sit where they are, is because we are really interested in this as a way of saying, this is going to sound a little bit grandiose, but hopefully it'll sort of make sense to people. The sort of philosophy of 0 Hour is this idea of how do you give people in a village hall access to the halls of power in some form. And the idea is, okay, these people held this screening, they've got these demands, and we are going to get this MP to raise that in this committee and get this answer. But not only that, but to be like, and loads of people have asked the same question, so we are going to try and table this amendment, table legislation to try and deliver the change that's needed. So that's the idea. That's the sort of the big picture. And yeah, the solutions focused, I'm 100% with you. But actually the content of the film, I don't know anything. So on the 7th, I'll be the same as everyone else, curious to see what it's like.
Thank you.
Simon, you get the pleasure of the final question. Thanks for waiting.
Right, yeah, we've got two things that we've got to do as far as I understand it. Meet our MP and set up the meeting. Now, Zero Hour has been on me for a long time to set up a meeting with the MP, so I've gone ahead with that. How should that sort of interact with setting up the meeting? Should I be doing that at the same time as writing to the MP?
It's a brilliant question. It's almost, again, like you've been planted in this, because that's a perfect way to end this call. So this really depends on when the MP meeting happens. So if the MP meeting happens to happen before the screening, we can have bespoke asks that this is a mechanism to actually say, essentially come to the screening, see what people in the community think about what's going on as a way to encourage them. If it's happening afterwards, in some ways it's even stronger, because you can say, this many people were in this hall watching this information, and they were all looking not for what your policy is, but actually what your solution is. What new action will you take to address some of these things? And the good thing about the briefings is that they are available. Like, the film will be available, but so is the briefings. So you can actively be like, you couldn't see the film or you couldn't see the briefings, and use that MP meeting as one of the asks to say, will you watch this and tell me what you're going to do in response to it? And that means the meeting, they don't have to be like, well, I don't know because I haven't seen it. It can be part of the ask. But a thing that I really want to just drum home about the way that Zero Hour work is that we are very keen on bespoke asks, because we want the rapport, the relationship to gradually be building with MPs. So we can help sort of curate depending on timing or the position of that MP, because some people on this call might have an MP who's a minister. He'll be like, well, getting them to do something very different to someone who is a backbencher, or my MP is the opposition, and all of these things factor into why they ask, the urgency of what you ask, and the opportunities of an MP. But yeah, how that factors in is they should directly interact. So it should either be how do you have an ask and one of the asks is come to the screening, or if it's afterwards, we held the screening and that is the context for why I'm asking this ask of you in Parliament. So they are meant to all interact with each other. This also can help with what the National Emergency Briefing's own ask is about the televised briefing. Most people, not everyone, but most people who get given an MP meeting will get 15, 20 minutes. So if they know what you're coming out to speak to them about, 20 minutes actually can sometimes be quite long, because if you go in and say, this is what I'm concerned about and this is what I'm asking you, they'll say, I'll get back to you. And then the meeting ends. But if you can say, this is what I'm concerned about, this thing happened locally, this is why it's constituency work, I would like you to watch it and get back to me with it. You give them a timeline, say, I would like you to get back with me in a month and let me know what actions are being taken, what new action you're going to take. And I would like you to call and sign this pledge to have a televised briefing. And it's a way that you can not have a big thing that we're keen on, and we've been quite successful with, touch wood, is if you can have a good prepared meeting with your MP that doesn't feel like you're going in and attacking them. You're going in and saying, people are concerned, this is the questions I have, I want to work with you on these things. Quite a lot of people end up with a follow-up meeting, because the MP won't have an answer. They probably haven't watched the briefing. They probably haven't watched the film unless they've come to it. That's an opportunity. It's not a negative. It's an opportunity, because it means you can say, I'm going to do a follow-up. That follow-up might be by an email. It might be them offering you a meeting. But that relationship is how you get someone. And there's loads. I've got too many anecdotes to really talk about, but there's lots of stories of us starting with someone where they are a little bit hesitant about one aspect of the bill, and we say that's fine, that's okay. You don't have to come on board and support the whole climate nature bill, but will you raise this question in the committee you're in? And that MP suddenly feels like, oh, they're actually quite cooperative with me. But the constituent has got the win because the MP went from not talking about it to talking about it. So our thing is about baby stepping people towards legislative change. And the reason I say legislative change is that quite a lot of people will actually tell you the thing they've already done. So it's no good saying, well, 2 years ago I raised this question in Parliament. It's like, yeah, but did that change the law? Is the law up to scratch? No. So it's how do you say, will you ask the question about an update on the thing that you did? Will you ask when that thing is going to be done by? So yeah, hopefully that helps. To wrap up, because I realise we've went very over time, but that's exciting. You'll get a follow-up email with the recording and with the main links. The main links will be sign up through the NEB. So sign up to make sure that they know that you're thinking about hosting one. If you want to be connected, sign up through the 0 Hour link to connect to other campaigners, and the email directly to contact us. If you're like, actually, I'm really stuck with this aspect. I'm really stuck with my MP. I'm really stuck with how I'm going to promote it, whatever it might be. The biggest thing I can say is we will do everything we can to try and help. I really appreciate the difficult questions that I couldn't answer. Just to say about the NEB film, we will speak to the NEB team to try and get as many of those as possible. But a lot of it will come in due course. But David had his hand up, so I'm hoping for inspiring words.
Really great, Alan. Well done. There were quite a few questions about sort of school-based work, and I've dropped into the chat that there is a group working on the National Emergency Briefing for Teachers.
Yeah, great.
That's going to be launched. They're getting ahead of the game. They've got a Climate and Nature Education Festival in London on the 14th of March, and someone's kindly put the link in the chat for that. Rachel Ramley, thank you for doing that.
Well, that's great that we have the link because we can include it in the follow-up.
So
much appreciated.
So the youngsters and their educators aren't being missed out.
Fantastic. Yeah, good. Okay, this has been super helpful. Thanks again for staying on extra time. And yeah, we'll be in touch with this follow-up email. And hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Alan.